So, Mr. Tibbens, really quickly, would you consider homeschooling your kids?
Oh, that's wow. All right. You caught me I was about to hit the stop button. I would not, I mean, if I could stay home, like I tease my wife about this. I always say that I would be a wonderful stay-at-home dad because I don't actually mind being home this much. Like I talk a lot, but I'm finding ways through either social media or doing podcasts to like still talk, you know. I wouldn't mind it so much. I think it's easier to do early on. Like I think you can do it in elementary school, maybe through middle school. I think that there are very few people, and thinking like as a parent, there are very few parents that have the knowledge base to effectively facilitate a high school education. Now, if you had access to a good online program or something like that, that's great. I'm also of the belief that at least 50% of the most important things you learn in school, you didn't learn in class. You know, you learn them in the hallways, in the cafeteria, on the bus, or through your extracurriculars and clubs and all that. And so by doing homeschooling, especially at the later grades, but maybe at all, I think you're giving up a lot of the social experience and that kind of learning. Not to say that that goes well for everyone. You go to school and you do have to deal with bullying and discrimination. I mean, that's not a perfect situation either. I think if you have connections to a good homeschooling network or you have other families in the area that are doing something similar, that would ease some of my concerns because, you know, right now, like we're doing and my kids are young too, but we're doing a very loose kind of homeschooling. Like we just make sure we read a lot each day and then we do whatever. We're playing in the garden, you're building with Legos, just do something, you know, and I think that that's good. I don't know that I feel good about keeping my kids away from other kids, certainly to the extent we're doing now. But that would be one of my biggest concerns with homeschooling would be the extra stuff. You know, it's hard to participate in band. It's hard to participate in at least in certain sports and some athletics. And so for those reasons, I probably would not. That being said, I do think there's a lot of value in it, and I've given it some thought, but I just don't know that I'm in the personal situation to do that. Like both my wife and I work. So, you know, if I was suddenly, you know, independently wealthy beyond imagination and I didn't have to go to work, I might dabble with it, you know, at least through elementary school. I just think that as you get older, I don't know. I think being homeschooled has a stigma to it that is unfair. But if you ask someone to describe their like typical quote unquote homeschool kid, we get like really weird images of like, you know, like socially awkward people and like, I don't know why, like I always imagine like Mennonite women, which is totally unfair, but like long skirts, very sort of plain, but you know, soft spoken.
TV shows are always the same. It's the same person in every homeschooled character.
Yeah, and I know that's not true, and I know that that's unfair. But
them out there, but
no, but yeah, I just think that for all the flaws that school has, it creates a shared experience in an institution that gives you access to art, to music, to athletics, to the academics. And while I think we can do it a million times better than we do, I also wouldn't throw it out entirely. And that's something I talked about with Jim Dunning was he sort of just toss it all and do something different. And I'm very much of the mindset that, you know, I don't think the changes I want to happen ever will anytime soon. But I think that we can improve what we're doing enough to make it something that works or makes it work better anyway. So I wouldn't toss it. So I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I probably myself would not homeschool my own children, at least not beyond maybe the first few years of elementary school. Because at that point, I think that whether or not the classroom experience is important, I think the other things that come with school are. And I don't know that I could replicate that in ways that I would be comfortable with outside of that setting. Is that fair? I mean, you can tell me I'm an idiot. I'm not grading your work right now. So if you think that's a bad answer, you should tell me.
No, that makes sense. A lot of people ask us, they're like, "Oh, if you ever have kids, would you homeschool your kids?" And I think about that a lot. And I'm like, I don't think I could like. Sounds so selfish, but like give up my career to like homeschool my kids when I know they're very viable options out there, which will like they'll gain like a good education. But I personally don't think I would homeschool my kids, even though I like loved my experience. But
would you? Would you?
I probably wouldn't as well. For the same reasons. I don't know if I'd, give up a career to do that, but I also don't know if I would send them to public school. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's that's tricky. That's when I ask people, what is your ideal school? And then, sometimes most of the time people give something that's sort of creative. I've only had a few sort of just, I just get rid of standardized tests. And I'm like, well, that's that's a wasted opportunity. Like, but okay. Sometimes I follow up with, would you send your kids there? And people always like, well, yeah. And I'm like, if you really believed in your first answer, then it should be a no-brainer. Like the answer should be emphatically yes. And if you hesitate, if you say this is the ideal school and then you hesitate to say you would send your own kids there, then you've misunderstood something along the way in this conversation. Yeah, I don't know. That it is a tricky thing to think about, having to give up, say, your own career or something like that. I mean, for me, one of the things I have to be very careful of is, it's weird. When I was young, I was not a very patient person. Like in elementary and middle school, I actually got in a lot of fights. And then in high school, it sort of mellowed out. And I students in school, and you get this a little in AP, but in some of my other classes, maybe that you weren't in, I have students regularly like pull me aside or as they're walking out of class and say like, I don't know how you just did that without yelling at him, or, I would have hit that kid if they said that. And like, I have students complimenting me on how patient I am, which I think is interesting considering how maybe I wasn't like that when I was young. But I also have to be very careful because I'm learning as a parent, like as a father, that with some things, not everything, but with some things, I'm less patient with my own kids than I am with kids in school. Right. Like when it's someone else's kid and it's 90 minutes and then you're out of here, that's one thing, but you're my kid and we live together. And and
hold you to a higher standard.
And I have to be careful because I think in certain ways I feel it's not that I'm trying to be less patient. I just think I hold higher expectations or something like that. And so I would also have to be very careful if I was to homeschool my kid that I didn't become like commandeering in a way where the freedom that I think we should create in school, I might easily turn around and not create for my own kid. And so I think for me personally, that's just like a character flaw that I have to be careful of. And so I think homeschooling would be dangerous for me because I would be concerned about how I might handle that behavioral piece of it. And it's not so much about my kids' behavior. It would really be more about my own. Like I'd have to be careful. Yeah.
Interesting. That's fun.
Yeah. I mean, you see the parents on the sidelines at a soccer game and they get a little too intense about it. And like, I'm not that guy, but man, if I had to sit down and make sure that my kid's going to work through his math problems or learns to write an essay, I might start sounding like that guy and I have to be careful. Yeah, that's good. Now I have to rethink this entire conversation and put myself in the situation of both the homeschooled kid and as the parent, because some of the stuff I said before, I'm now thinking like, well, if I was actually in the situation, I don't even know if I would have I'd have been okay with that. That's good. That's really good. I'm glad you stuck that in because now I had to say something personal. And usually when I'm asking the questions, everyone else is saying the personal stuff. So that was a great question at the end.